And Hare Krishna. I need to see it. This is
माताजी को दोनों दिखाना होता है, स्क्रीन भी दिखाओ, माता दोनों भी दिखाओ। इसको लगा दे, इसको अंदर रख दो।
with George Harrison, the first time they actually met. So I'm going to regress back to that little section so that you could catch up on that first meeting. And before that, what had happened is some of Shamasundar's old friends from the Grateful Dead, was a very famous band in San Francisco in America, and the Hells Angels, which were a motley group of it was a motorcycle gang, and they were really rough characters, kind of like modern day Vikings, you know, scary eyes, big, burly, and they like to fight. So this is the group of um, characters that had been old friends of Shamasundar's, and they called and had Shamasundar pick them up at the airport, and they stayed one night at the Betterton, 22 Betterton Street makeshift temple that had been the old International Times uh, printing press building. Now it's just been used to store books. So they had created a makeshift temple there. So these group, something like 8 or 12 of them, and they even brought motorcycles on the plane. Can you imagine? Those days, you could bring a motorcycle. So um, they they had a street, and so they're well, that's the little tiny background. So right here, we're talking about what was going on there. So I'm going to jump right in. The place was crowded with about 50 people drinking and talking. Rock stars, elegant women, Carnegie
सुनो,
Street hippies, guys in suits, and our motley San Francisco crew spread out among them. I create rock, then take a seat at the far end of the room, away from the two doors at the opposite end, behind which everyone says the Beatles are having a meeting and will be out shortly. Hours pass. Hours. Hare Krishna, where have you been? I've been waiting to meet you. Now this is George Harrison saying this, like the long lost friend I've been waiting to meet you. I love his accent. George is dressed in a loose flowered shirt with a ruffled neck, and I'm in a dark blue, narrow, well, it's a narrow jacket, tied at the collar with drops of indigo dye running in the sweat down my back. George sits down and starts yakking a mile a minute, as if we're old friends meeting after a long time. You can imagine Joe Sunders to his relief. George is very effusive and he's welcoming him. He's saying, "Oh, I've been wanting to meet you." And so it's just like Srila Prabhupada says, if you want to meet Krishna, act in such a way that he wants to meet you. So George wants to meet him. Of course, Shama Sundar has been working day and night to organize this meeting. And in the last, it's like, oh, I've been wanting to meet you. So most of the people in the room were stunned, and some come over to gawk silently while we shoot the breeze. Others continue to mill around, drinks in hand, trying to look cool. Rather than nervous, I feel marvelously fluent, chosen, and wonderfully happy. Motioning around the room, he says, "Do you know these people?" "Yeah, I know some of these guys. Old friends from San Francisco I used to hang out with and drop acid." Acid means LSD, intoxicant. When I met Swami now, we've got a temple in the Ashbury, maybe 100 devotees. Most are ex-freaks like me, just means ex-drug addicts. No, they're no longer taking any form of intoxication. George digging the story. Digging means likes it. The slang of the Bohemian slang of the time. Shama Sundar uses that. So he's digging the story and tells me about his trip to the Hague laughing. He tells me some things that he's learned from Ravi and Yogananda. That's Ravi Shankar, Yogananda, and the Maharishi, telling how he often listens to the happening in the devotees. This picture here is on the back of the happening in the low. And it was what we used to listen to over and over again. We used to listen to it. The Prabhupada's voice, I mean, it's booming voice. We had never heard any voice like Srila Prabhupada's. So for us, it was like, well, out of this world. Srila Prabhupada's voice is completely out of this world. And you can see right there, it says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. So what's happening? Hare Krishna's happening. We became known as the Hare Krishna people because that was the first thing that they heard, then the last thing they heard. We were always singing and chanting names of Krishna. Vedanta Swami singing the Hare Krishna mantra describing an incident that happened the year before when a lake he was on suddenly lost altitude and started to crash. This is George Henderson telling the story that was in a plane that was about to crash and he shouted, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. He just was singing at the top of his lungs. And I mean, the plane was going plummeting just to its death. And just before it hit the ground, it started to gain altitude again. So you can imagine George Harrison's pretty serious about it. It looks, you can understand that when Krishna likes you very much, he shows you some magic. This was magic. Krishna magic. And around Prabhupada, so much Krishna magic. They're playing the Happening album. They're were listening to Prabhupada chant all the time. And so he has that experience. He's dying, he's going to die. When you're going to die, when you're like this, you take shelter of the holy name and you take serious shelter. Serious shelter. So that was Krishna being really kind to George Harrison, really kind. And then, okay, I'll save you now. And there's another instance that happened too, that George, I mean, I know too, there may have been more. And in the course of your life, you'll have these magical experiences. So there was another instance where Prabhupada was telling me, we went to dinner at George's house. And I mean, we got to hear this from Srila and Mukunda. Both they tell this marvelous story. They're all there having dinner. Prabhupada had said, John, today I want you to ask George Harrison for a donation to print the Krishna book, $10,000. And in that was like the $100,000 now. It's a lot of money. And Shama Sundar was like, I've never asked him for anything. I've never asked him for anything. He was dreading it. Dreading. Now I have to. When you're with a very wealthy, famous, beautiful person, artistic person, you really don't want to ask favors. Because then they think you are only there because you want something from them. But Srila Prabhupada said, ask. So Shama was like, so the dinner was almost finished. And so Sham realizes they're just finishing up, they better ask now. And so Sham says, so George, we're really looking at the book. And we're hoping that you could donate for the printing of the Krishna book. And George's face dropped, like he was so disappointed, like, oh, so that's the only thing first, my money. And Sean felt his heart sank. And all of a sudden there was thunder and lightning and huge storm whipped up. And all the electricity went off in the house. And the thunder and the lightning was coming. So when the lights came back on, George said, how much did you need that check for? So Krishna magic. Krishna showed him magic. Like, imagine. Like, you're not going to give it to me? You have so much money. Why? And so he can do like this. Thunder, lightning, no electricity, lights going off. That means he was favored. Krishna was favoring him. He was giving him special mercy to give him that jolt. You can do it, you can do it. And he got that mercy. So this happened with him not hitting the ground. And he was telling him now how the 6 of us devotees, the Swami's disciples, most of his friends since childhood, had come to London to spread the word about Krishna, that we lived together in a warehouse in Covent Garden, and how we've given up intoxicants of all kinds, even tea, and eat no meat, fish or eggs. And I know I read this last time, we don't gamble and have given up even sex, he winces, except for getting children. I have a child, but we get Krishna in return. So Shama is really telling exactly how it is. We're feeling the great benefits of this surrender, the long-lasting pleasure that's better than any drug. I tell him I'm a carpenter doing odd jobs to get along. Another devotee is a photographer, and one who is also who tunes pianos. But what I don't get is, this is what George is, but what I don't get is, why just Krishna? I mean, you've got Shiva, Ganesh, Brahma, They're all the same, aren't they? Why don't you chant Hare Shiva or something? We're Vaishnavas. This is a loaded question. And here you are. So he says, yeah, well, you've read Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, and Krishna is speaking it, all right. To his friend Arjuna, Krishna is Bhagavan. Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the big guy. He uses I am and come to me, and this is mine. And he is a person, but the supreme person. He is Bhagavan. Bhagavan means someone who has 6 opulences in full. I mean, you're George Harrison. You're famous, you're rich. You're beautiful, but God has all these opulences full. I'm here, George Harrison. You're famous, you're rich, you're, yes, beautiful. He has all the wealth, he has all the fame, all the knowledge, all the power, and he's going like this on his fingers. He's more beautiful than anyone. And at the same time, he is all renounced. He doesn't give a hoot about any of it. Such a person who has everything is therefore very attractive to us. He attracts us like no other. Now that's something in a song. Attracts us like no other. So George picked up on that and wove it into a song. Many of his songs were about loving Krishna. He attracts us like no other. That's Krishna. This name means the all-attractive supreme person. So we like to go to this top guy, Krishna, and call on him. Try to get something going with him. Bombshell time. George is soaking it all in, and we seem to be frozen in time, little ticks and flutters of his eyes as the pieces were settling and locking into place. I'm impressed. He's so quick to understand things. Going quickly to the core. He gets it. He says, I'm on a roll now, talking about my spiritual master Bhaktivedanta Swami, how he comes now in an age-old line of disciplic succession, teaching what his master taught him and so on back through time. That's what we're learning. It's nothing new or made up, but the real scoop about Krishna, Sanatana Dharma, ancient science of God realization as it is, shaking off the little thoughts that, wow, this guy, my big hero, so handsome and magnetic, is actually spellbound and listening to me. Remember in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna expands himself and shows Arjuna all the universes. He moves like that cover on the Jimi Hendrix album. Well, all these infinite universes are just expansions of Krishna's energy, his effulgence, called the Brahmajyoti. I know some of these great masters prefer to connect with this Brahmajyoti, this cosmic consciousness, they call it, become one with God or merge with the void. And that's all right. That's one path to God consciousness, but it's called the impersonal approach. And it's very difficult to attain in this modern age of chaos, Kali Yuga. Right away, we're so fallen nowadays, it's recommended that we just take a shortcut and go right to Krishna by chanting his name. It's called the personal approach. Personal or impersonal? These are the 2 approaches to God. It's just easier to go personal. Just like now, when I do prefer meeting you here, talking to you, sharing some words, some emotions, some laughs, sitting in my pad, stoned on the muse or on your music. Hey, your music's great too, but I'd rather be here just now yakking with you. Yeah, Shama Sundar, I feel like I've always known you somehow, maybe from a life before, like maybe we were brothers or something. If you're free, we'll talk again Sunday at my place. I met his eyes and see the ancient flame. He smiles with those huge teeth, and there's nothing more to say. With quick, efficient movements, he sprawls about to his place on a napkin, places beautiful hair As he looks around, leaps up, waves farewell to everyone and leaves. The whole room sparkles. His face smells like incense, French tobacco, and good soap. Derek Taylor describes this day, December 13th, 1968, as Black Friday in his book, As Time Goes By, to help spread the word that Apple was willing to help and thought maybe it was no use trying to blame anyone else for Black Friday, the day at Apple where the Hells Angels, the managers of the Grateful Dead, a homeless family of 7 from California, the Beach Boys, Hare Krishna, 2 transcendental meditators from Rishikesh, Mary Hopkins, George Harrison, John Lennon, Yoko Ono, German television producer and Tabby Mutu, all arrived at once, needing cups of tea and conversation. It is over, Black Friday, it is over. I am still alive and I recall a few details. Few indeed. That was amusing from this fellow's book. Rock Scully said Apple didn't put much food out, so there was a lot of drinking, and everyone was really hungry, and the people were getting pissed off, hours of waiting, and finally, what happened? The Hells Angel had brought one of those stupid English bikers, and they were getting pushy and loud and ended up knocking somebody down those steep stairs. Ringo was sitting there, and this faux English biker comes rolling down the stairs, and Ringo goes, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Got out of hand. When I returned to Betterton Street, I was surprisingly calm, relieved that the wait was over, and the others pumped me for information, and I shared with them everything that had happened that afternoon, from the cop at the front door to the ruckus on the stairs, leaving Apple. George was such a nice guy. I told him over and over. I'm not kidding. It was just like talking to my brother. He's a Christian devotee, one of us. You're going to love him. I was so thankful that I'd been chosen for this very special service, and my inner glee was tempered by the feeling that this was, after all, just Krishna's plan unfolding. No big deal. Meeting George felt so normal. Malati said, I remember Shamasundar coming up the stairs at Betterton Street saying, he had met George, and he's really a nice guy. He said it so matter-of-factly. Usually, I got really excited by these things. He'd rub his hands together and squeal like a coyote, but he was so low-key and casual. On Sunday, December 15th, I made a solo trip out to Kim Fawn's, George's psychedelic ranch house near Esher in Surrey, pulling up in my red pickup in a cloud of oil smoke. George introduces me to Patty. I get the feeling that he wants to run all this new Krishna stuff by her too. See what she thinks. What a stunner she is. It's so soft and quiet, refined. We small talk for a while and then get right into it. He fires one question after another. He's so hungry for philosophy. Purpose of life, I said. That's an easy one. Animals, they have 4 purposes in their lives: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending themselves. As humans, we share these 4 purposes, propensities, as Swami calls them. With animals, sure, we have better eating arrangements. We build palaces for sleeping. We think of thousands of ways to have sex. We have atom bombs to defend ourselves. But that's still animal life. As humans, we have a 5th propensity to know who I am, where I come from, and where I'm going. If we don't use this ability while we're in our human body, we're no better than animals. So the purpose of human life is to seek out who I am. George says, yeah, I've been sort of feeling that too the last few years. I want to know what it's all about. You know, it's like meeting you and hearing about Krishna and the Swami has come up at a perfect time in my life. A lot of changes are going down. All these bits and pieces running around my head, the pieces of the puzzle seem to fit into a big picture. The way you're saying it, but it's not just me, I'm just a messenger. I don't really know very much, but I do know the guy who knows everything. And that's the thing about Bhaktivedanta Swami. He can answer any question perfectly. He's also a messenger delivering what's called absolute knowledge, but it's so logical. So it's also absolute science. Everything I say about it can be proved. There's no loose ends. Go ahead, ask me anything. Okay, so what do I find out when I find out who I am, where I came from, and where I'm going? Krishna or Jehovah or Allah or the Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it, this God who created us, an infinite number of tiny individual spirit souls who inhabit this his creation in an infinite number of individual bodies. Krishna is a person, just like sparks are very small quantities of the big fire from which they came. So we share Krishna's personal attributes. We sense with five senses. We think, we laugh, we work, we love. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and we are all his enjoyed. If we forget this relationship and instead want to enjoy something on our own, we have free will, just like Krishna. He is so kind that he creates this material world for us, and he gives us the body of a pig if we want to eat more, or a rabbit if we want to have more sex, like that. So when we wake up and realize that I'm someone to be enjoyed by Krishna, that I have an original, individual, loving relationship with Krishna as his servant, friend, parent, or even his lover, then I know where I'm going. I'm going to use this little lifetime to nourish my relationship, revive my love of God, feel God love me in return, and go back home, back to Godhead. This is called self-realization. George picks up on this. Oh, like Vivekananda says, each soul is divine. The goal is to manifest that divinity. Patty says, you do it by chanting, others do it by meditation or something different kinds of yoga. Yeah, right. Yoga means union in Sanskrit. We get the English yoga from yoga. Yoga means practice, some discipline to unite yourself with God. Meditation, Raj Yoga, Hatha Yoga, so many yogas, but they're very different to perform in this day and age. So we like to practice bhakti, difficult to perform in this day and age. So we like to practice bhakti yoga, the yoga of loving devotion. Bhakti means unalloyed devotion. We fan the flames of love of God by chanting his names all the time, reading about him, talking about him, eating his food, hanging out with others who are trying to remember him. That way you gradually become Krishna conscious. What you feel in the state of consciousness, wow, confidence, no fear, bliss, ecstasy, all good stuff. George is laughing. His knowing looks says he feels the bliss I'm describing and wants to feel it some more. Patty quietly moves off to the kitchen to whip us up a snack. George stayed right with it, one question after another. He puts on a couple of his favorite records, Bob Dylan, Lenny Bruce. I can see he wants a spiritual friend, someone to talk with about deep matters. He's a one-on-one kind of guy and prefers to deal with one person rather than a group. We talk for hours about my checkered past, what led me to the Swami. We talk about India, Hinduism, the Beatles, his psychedelic refrigerator, his intense desire to perfect his life. He says that being a Beatle has proved to him that there is so much greater magic out there. And as a Beatle, he now has the chance and the freedom to seek out the highest truth and to tell others about it. This is an opportunity he learned after millions of lifetimes, and he doesn't want to waste it. He feels the burden placed on him, especially after seeing Haight-Ashbury, to set an example for others who are hanging on his every word. He's alone and hungry for spiritual companionship. Hey, George, you've got to meet the rest of my gang. The devotees here in London. Mukunda is a jazz musician. Brudas is a laugh-a-minute. Jamuna sings like Janis Joplin. Really, you can come over to our temple in the warehouse one of these days when you're in London. It's not much. The girls are great cooks, and we can have a roaring chant and feel the bliss. In our first meeting, George was so familiar and at ease that it seemed like we were talking of a conversation we started yesterday. He was full of energy and inquisitive, and we understood each other immediately. It was a kinship of the soul. We both felt such deep pleasure in conversing. Even my shoulders tingled with glee. He said, I've only felt this way with two other people in my life, Ravi and Bob Dylan. To be regarded as such august company, this was happening way too quick, like fast forwarding the movie of my life to be assigned this special role by Krishna. Krishna's design meant a new and very great responsibility. And helping George in Krishna consciousness now became a duty that would drive my life. The son and stewardship, being one of George's Shisha gurus, a peer who advises on spiritual life, quadrupled my enthusiasm to help Swami build his London center. Everything I did from that on, every decision, every act, was based not only on will this please the Swami, but now also will this please George. And even when George asked Prabhupada about initiation, and Srila Prabhupada said, you're already Hari's son, because his last name was Harrison, Hari's son. So you're already Hari's son. Srila Prabhupada had a way of noticing so many things. Swamiji wrote me on December 21st, 1968, Dear Shamasundar, it is understood from your letter that Mr. George Harrison has a little sympathy for our movement. And if Krishna is actually satisfied on him, surely he will be able to join with us in pushing on the Sankirtan movement throughout the world. Somehow or other, the Beatles have become the cynosure of the neighboring European countries and America also. During the British period in India, anything which was trademarked made in London was sold very quickly. So try to make your London attribution equally important so that when the young boys and girls of England and America combine together in a Sankirtan party, will be a great revolution in the world. Again, the word revolution. Prabhupada was setting up a spiritual revolution. In the mid-November, a number 44 of the International Times, Mr. Haynes, Jack Moore from the Arts Lab, had announced an alchemic wedding, some kind of vague happening, to be held in early December. The theme was to be the revolution is over and we have won. Alchemical wedding comes from the medieval concept of mixing mercury with iron to make gold. John Lennon and Yoko Ono were hanging out at the Arts Lab. This was during the medieval or even the Renaissance time that there were so many wealthy people that had laboratories, and they had a quest. It was a spiritual quest. They believed that if you could turn bell metal into gold, it would be a sign of some kind of spiritual blessing. So from this quest, and it was a quest for abundance and spirituality, chemistry was born. Because in their experiments, they would write down the different reactions. And so they were actually creating a whole, out of the quest for spirituality and opulence, they were creating a new branch of science, chemistry. And it was starting with alchemy, the spiritual quest. So that was their theme of this happening that was going to go on. John Lennon and Yoko Ono were hanging out at the Arts Lab, and you'd see their white Rolls Royce parked out front. May agreed to be parked in Jim's and Jack's happening. The two of them, it was decided, would enter a big white bag on stage and lie down in it. That was the whole show. They rented prestigious Royal Albert Hall for the event, and the date was set for the night of December 18th. Junie asked us if we would be part of the show to see what might happen. We said, sure, we'd be there. On December 16th, a messenger came to the girls at Betterton Street. He said, Yoko Ono wants to see you over at the Arts Lab. This was like the ticket, and this was the flyer, probably the flyer. I got it off the internet. Malati walked over, and Yoko Ono asked her if the Krishnas could prepare a huge amount of prasadam for 4,000 guests expected at Albert Hall. Yes, we have no pots, Malaji said. And she made a shopping list to give it to Yoko. Later that day, the rolls pulled up in front of 22 Betterton, and the chauffeur unloaded half a dozen huge pots, several bags of semolina, and crates of butter. By 8 p.m., Albert Hall was packed with people. Arthur L.E. Harris described the night of the alchemical wedding in his story, A Foot Soldier's Tale. The crowd buzzed with excitement, but nothing happened. The audience started to fidget in their seats. There was an air of anxiety about it. The silence became long and deep and seemed to engulf us. Then, almost out of nowhere, someone banged a drum and there was an ecstatic cry for joy. The Krishna devotees began to chant, and I found myself swept off my feet by the momentum. Keep in mind, there's just Yoko Ono and John Lennon in a white bag on stage. That was it. And everybody was waiting for something to happen. Nothing was happening. So we'll go on with the space in the front of the stage filled with swaying, swirling bodies high on the energy created out of silence. This was the circle, the culmination of what the human family was all about, the utter chaos in it. Its highest form was the act of communal magic that could transcend earthbound reality. Janaki, shy and unassertive Janaki, broke the ice. She ran from the wings onto the stage and started banging her kartals. Then Mukunda whopped the drum, and we all rushed out to help her. We jumped from the stage, danced and chanted in front of it. Then Janaki led the charge up and down the aisles as hundreds left their seats to join us. These were not just tippies, they were mostly middle and upper class Londoners who had paid £1 apiece to see for themselves the strange new things happening in their city. On the kirtan roared while John and Yoko lay silently in the bare bag on stage. Announcements that you could hear came over the PA, something like about safety laws and severe punishment, and ultimately the policemen forced everyone back into their seats. The devotees dumped hundreds of scoops of halva in the hallway on little napkins. The news was out. The new age of freedom and enlightenment was being born, and the Krishnas were at the heart of it. We were the only thing that happened at the happening. Well, one other thing happened. A woman removed her blouse and bra, looked rather normal sitting in the 14th row next to her husband in a white turtleneck sweater, horn-rimmed glasses. Guru Das, with an eye ever open for good shots, snapped photos of the odd couple and ran over to the Daily Mirror in time to meet the midnight deadline. Next morning, headlines read, "Naked rave up at Albert Hall." He made a quick £50 in Krishna's service. Guru Das made another quick 50 quid a few days later. The condemned building next door, the Arts Lab, had been taken over by squatters, hippies camping there illegally. There was a fire, and we heard the alarms and ran up and down the streets to see the commotion. One girl was stranded on a window ledge 3 stories up, flames and smoke visible behind her. The fireman below stretched out a big blanket and beckoned her to jump. Guru Das whipped out his Nikon and snapped her picture midair. Looks of wonder on everyone's upturned faces. This evening's front page photo of the day was by Guru Das. So he was getting all the opportune shots. Our man on the spot, he must have seemed rather strange to those Brits with their long tradition of reserve, their stiff upper lips with rational, pragmatic philosophy. We gave off a frontier cowboy energy, exuberant Americans with only a bright future ahead. We were so enthusiastic, maybe because we knew the deed was already done by Krishna, and we were just enjoying devotional service in the time gap between now and the foregone conclusion. We watched Krishna sweep away the obstacles, how easily he did it, and everything seemed so easy, predestined. We didn't have a temple yet, but we knew it was only a matter of time. The Swami had backed off, no longer chiding us for being slow. Now he saw our strategy. In fact, he says to Janaki in a letter December 9th, I think also that it is a good sign that Krishna is still in to give us a nice London temple. Because when it finally will come, it may be the most ideal temple for our purposes. So none of you should be discouraged, but go on with your engagements and everything will come out automatically very nicely. All all of us, maybe Janaki is having the hardest time adjusting. In the same letter to her, Swamiji writes, actually, I'm always thinking of you as my naughty daughter. So far as you're writing, you're lonely. I think that there's no need for this such sentiments of wishing for me to be there is nice. But a girl is meant for living with her husband and not her father. And you have a especially nice, beautiful husband. And not only that, but he is devoted also. You're very fortunate. So continue to faithfully help your husband in executing the mission of his life to spread Krishna consciousness. And surely Krishna will bless you and grant you all happiness. This is my blessing upon you. Through these years, I felt that Swami was always with us. He talked, we talked with him in our heads, gazed inwardly at his beautiful physical form, heard him as he gave solace and answered our questions like, what do we do now? We wrote back and forth, constantly exchanging minute details, and he guided us in every manner. I understand Malati is having some rheumatic condition and is causing pain and numbness. The best thing is for her to take hot baths and massage with camphor oil. If it is too much painful, use Sloan's liniment. The best thing is to consult with a very expert physicians of medicine. Best thing is to chant Hare Krishna loudly. Malati says none of us were there for our personal glory or recognition, so that it was the unique thing about that period. Every day, all day, whatever personal things were going on, we were united together to make this mission succeed for the Swami. And we weren't intimidated, nor did we intimidate others, because we were there as Swami's ambassadors to give something. In 1966, was drawing to a close. Only 4 months had passed since Swamiji's commandos had stormed the shores of the British Isles, but already the Hare Krishna mantra was being heard all over London, and there were several new English devotees. We were the darlings of the huge Indian community. Something about Krishna was featured in every issue of the International Times, the voice of the hippies. We had a central home base, jobs, a network of friends and well-wishers. Best of all, as per our original desire to come to the UK, we had met the Beatles and more, had become their friends. The Swami's hunt for another big rhino was well underway. 1969 is only the year. 1969 came in blustery and dark in London. 22 Betterton Street was big enough to invite people over, and we had a network of friends and acquaintances, most of whom we didn't know each other, and we thought it was time for everyone to meet and make a plan about how to formally organize and push forward the Swami's London mission. We called it a board meeting. Gurudas informed the Swami about this plan, and in the late December, Swamiji sent us a tape of his speech addressed to members of the board. We scheduled our party for Saturday afternoon, January 4th, to give everyone a chance to recover from the holidays. We sent our printed announcement, unsure of how many, if any, would come. The invitation read, "Guess who's coming to dinner," and included a list of about 100 people we either knew or wanted to know in the London area. Geez, I think we even put Prince Charles' names on it. Around that time, we had there was a movie that came out. It was maybe 10 years earlier, so it's called, well, maybe 5 years. It was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So it was a little catchy phrase. So they took that same thing, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. We started getting a few RSVPs. Tom Driver, member of Parliament, would be there. Barry Miles from IT, a monk from the Blackfriars College in Oxford came. Simon Tugwell. We rented fancy cutlery and plates, and even champagne glasses and real napkins. We cleaned and decorated the place. The girls made a fabulous multi-course dinner. And then we waited to see who might show up. George sent a telegram saying that he couldn't make it, but to our great surprise, many others did. Lords and ladies, big names in Britain. They came to see who else might be there. Tom Feinberg MP was delighted that one of our new devotees, Colin, was from his constituency in Barking, East London. We showed up, an 8-minute film, of the Swami on a walk gave our new brief talks about how Casey was Krishna consciousness sweeping the globe and otherwise kept everyone entertained. Malati said, in those days there was a spirit of adventure, curiosity amongst the upper class people to see what was happening with the young hippie people scene. Against these perpetual problems, human society is struggling. This is Srila Prabhupada. Materialists are trying to solve the problems through scientific knowledge, education, philosophy, ethics, literature, and so on. The Salvationists are trying to solve the problems by putting forth various ways of discerning matter from spirit. And some people are trying to overcome birth and death through mystic yoga. We are, however, misled at present by leaders who have very little connection to God or Krishna. Our process is transcendentally colorful and full of transcendental pleasure. We prosecute Krishna consciousness through singing, dancing, eating, and hearing philosophy revived through the authorized disciplic succession of spiritual masters coming from Krishna himself. Therefore, Krishna consciousness gives us complete spiritual success without our undergoing any artificial change in our natural instincts. I thought, wow, this is really heavy stuff. It must be making these people nervous. And then Swamiji ended the philosophy part and makes his plea. But to assemble and sit together, we require a place for congregation. Therefore, I fervently appeal to you all present at the meeting to extend your cooperation for the successful execution of this great movement. My disciples in London have very eagerly asked me to visit there. I'm very anxious to see you all. Thank you once more, that is all. So Prabhupada closed, with a plea, an appeal. The seeds were sown. Some of the people would play major roles, helping us to obtain government permissions in the UK, like Lord Fenner Brockway, who probably came because he thought Prince Charles might be there. Lord Brockway was born near Calcutta and was an early advocate of Indian independence. He was a founding member of the War on Want and a campaign for nuclear disarmament. And like Driver, a prominent outlaw in British politics. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare, to be continued. See where, okay, Jai Hare Krishna. It's very exciting to see how, we went from rags to riches in Krishna consciousness. We really were just young people with very little, but Srila Prabhupada's vision in front of us. And it's just so beautiful. But we were fed up with so-called enjoyment of the material world. That was one thing about it. We bound together in the revolution spirit under Srila the banner of the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna. We were out in the streets every single day chanting Hare Krishna, doing Harinam Sankirtan every single day, 7 days a week. Yeah, it was wonderful. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.